Let's see if everything's working. Please stand by. Awesome. Hello, everybody. Yes, that's right. I have this kind of a voice, which you don't hear much in the archiving world. It's because I am a mutant grown in a lab. I actually come from film and presentations and then fell in love with wanting to preserve and save things that matter to me. All right, let's get going. This is called The Arcade Zombie Apocalypse, and it's me talking about bringing back games from the dead and what that really means when your world is filled with them. I want to really thank both EPFL and the University of Lausanne because they really went out of their way to take care of all of us who are visiting from America, that land of disease and misery, to make sure that we would come to this beautiful world. And it's been really breathtaking. Like many have been saying, this is my first international trip in well over 2 years, and I loved doing them. So I felt very welcome, and I appreciate it very much. So like he said, I'm a free-range archivist. God, who knows what that means? It means I do what I want, what I can do in any given day based on what falls into my inbox or what I want to do. It's a self-given title. I'm easily reachable by social media, and I work for a place called the Internet Archive, which a lot of people know of as archive.org, or even more likely at the top, the Wayback Machine, which is the way you can go see how embarrassed you are about something you did 10 years ago. It's also used in law, in politics, in research. It's used to, in some very rare cases, save sites that were deleted by mistake. It plays a part in the internet ecosystem, enough that people think it's an actual, government-funded thing. But it's not. It's a nonprofit in San Francisco. And you know that because it's in this building, which was purchased, I swear to you, because the founder thought it looked like his logo. And so when people use the Internet Archive, they may not know that inside is this insane building that used to be a church. And we, of course, pray to our servers every day. So if you're using the Internet Archive, some of the stuff may be on that server. If you work there for 3 years, they build a little statue of you. Here's me. I am the angel of death, so I have black wings. I'm clutching software to my chest. It's created by an artist named Nuala Creed, who's created well over 100. And so, like very few other institutions, when people walk in, they always ask the same thing, which is, what's with the creepy little statues? Well, that's the story. At the Internet Archive, you can read books, you can listen to music, you can watch movies, and you can browse websites. And the way we really like to do this is to make things instantly accessible to you. So if you look at a book, you can start reading the book or choose to download it. You can search its text because it's all OCR'd. We do this in varying ways for all the different media types. For instance, this is music, where you can see a cover and switch between the different songs. And kind of the theme here, which we've said before, is access drives preservation. That means that if people use these things, if it becomes part of their life, their ecosystem, it inspires others or these users to help support preservation of items. People seem to have a lot of trouble with abstract sorts of donations where, if you give us money, we promise things you will never see will persist, is difficult. It's a difficult thing to do, but we try to make it that the stuff is extraordinarily accessible. We also have this for movies. You click on them, you're able to see what's going on, and the theme here is, that's neat, can I look at it? And you're able to look at it. So when I got hired, the founder, Brewster Kahle, likes to give people impossible assignments. And he said, we do this with music and movies and books and everything. Could we kind of do the same thing with software? Wouldn't it be neat if you could click on software and just start playing the software? That would cause most people to back into the darkness and start thinking about their resume. But I was kind of excited by the idea. So I started working on software. And to be able to make software playable, you need to have software. So great news about that, because I've been encouraging people to send us many, many pieces of software. These are CD-ROMs that somebody sent me. These are America Online CDs. which in Europe is known as AOL Europe, which means it's called America Online Europe, which is the most imperialist title I've ever heard. But these are, at one point, half of all CD-ROMs produced in the world are America Online CD-ROMs being sent for free, so we're preserving them. Same thing with this very odd-looking clip art collection. You know, there's a lot of richness in software. It's not just files. You know, there was an entire world of CD-ROMs that I just adore, but not just ROMs. You know, what about floppy disks? Here's somebody sending me some floppy disks with a note telling me this was our user group in 1986. Hope you can do something with them. And I, of course, take them and try to transfer them into tiny files and put them away. And I've been doing this for 10 years, and you can tell because you start to see it turning into this. Now, this is from Indiana Jones, and if you sit through a lot, some of the people here are students. If you sit through enough lectures on libraries and archives, you will eventually see this shot from Indiana Jones where they put the Ark away. And I call this time to warehouse. How long into the talk are we going to see the warehouse? First of all, I want to say I think the shot from Citizen Kane is much, much better, because it really shows you, because it's not just that it's there, but that it's often disorganized and very hard to pick out, and it's kind of scary. On the other hand, this is our warehouse. This is our inbox. This is not just our collection. This is the stuff coming in. This is from a few years ago. We have lots and lots of packages, including these that I use to store software. I love this image because it looks like it's just, you know, a couple little boxes, until I put a lift next to it, and then you start to realize how big it is, and in fact, that they fit very snugly. This is actually just full of software and being stored in a shipping container, and there's me standing on a whole bunch of them. And these are tens of thousands of pieces of software, and you know, one of the side effects of being a website like the Internet Archive is that you end up being thought of as just a bunch of servers sitting, you know, place and having no physical aspect, but we most certainly do. We have millions of books and lots of videotapes and films and paper products, and we've been acquiring entire collections from other people as they have to get rid of it or have to find a home for it. In fact, you start to really realize how big it is when you look in the back there, and those are shipping containers. And that building looks like that because we're about to put the other 400 in. Anyway, we can hold it. What I ended up doing, and it took a number of years, was working with a set of volunteers and folks on something that I call the emularity, and that's the ability to emulate pretty much most mainstream software inside of the browser without requiring the installation of a plugin or some sort of additional piece. I wanted it as easy as possible. And I want to make a very quick note here. If you look at something like the multi-arcade machine emulator, MAME, it has its public source code where you can see what it does. And for anybody here who I guess isn't from Earth, MAME is basically a very, very large emulator capable of playing tens of thousands of different programs, platforms, computers. It's a mega emulator. And incredible amounts of work have been done by it. And I rush to tell you that if you look for my name, I have not donated any source code to it. And sometimes when a person talks like I do in this bombastic fashion, you go, well, surely he's the, you know, he's in charge of all this. No, I'm just a super fan for what they've done. If you look in their source code, you will see them doing very obscure pieces of equipment, to the point that if you look inside, they have drawn these text images of the circuit board to explain what they're emulating, because they think of themselves not just as something with the ability to play video games, but as a time capsule of research and knowledge that is able to be passed on to others, to be improved and studied. Emulation is not just video games. It's great for nostalgia and entertainment, but it's also our reference point of how these games work. They turn core files into playable experiences that enable people to decide, is this how it moved? Is this how fast it ran? Was it capable of this? I can tell lots of stories about putting 1979 era software in front of people and having them be stunned that this natural feature that was part of everything we do now is not there, you know. A Macintosh from the mid-1980s will not keep the window selection open if you click on the top of the menu. I know that sounds minor, it freaks everybody out. And you can experience it in real time. So the emularity was basically a system I worked with a legion of volunteers, burning through them, trying to come up with a basic idea. Could we convert all of MAME into JavaScript? Because JavaScript is the universal worst best language. It's an example of the worst winning the game because every other top tier in-browser program was owned by a terrible company or became a plugin or something difficult while JavaScript just dragged along for 20 years. And over time, it's become extraordinarily complicated to the point that you can compile full C++ programs into it. And so there is a program called Emscripten that does this. And it is incredible that this works at all. How does it work? Well, if you go to the Internet Archive and you go to the software collection, you can see programs coming up. And many of these have never been played by a human, including me. I actually have a machine that has the worst job in the world, which is to play all of these, take screenshots, choose the interesting ones, and make them the thumbnails. So these are put up, played by, experienced by, and maybe only ever experienced by computers. But what's important is that they're not just video games. They're not just specific commercial products. But the experience turned into this. You see a game, Castle Wolfenstein from 1981, a classic of the genre that eventually can be traced to Doom and other first-person shooters. You click on that button up at the top on the screenshot, and you're playing the game. You didn't do anything. You're just playing it. You like it, you don't like it, you move on to the next thing. That low barrier to entry means it's possible to put up many, many titles using this method. We emulate a whole range of platforms, home computers, lots of arcade machines, lots of console machines, you know, home video games, some of them extraordinarily obscure. You know, the PDP-1, you know, it was popular over 50 years ago. But now people would only think of it in maybe the most abstract terms, but you could try it out in seconds. The programs get to be extraordinarily obscure. Everything from video games to graphic demos, but you get things like this, and this is one of my favorites. This is a program which evaluates the performance of the PC that you're on. There's no PC. And I always like to think about, like, what does this program think is happening right now? That this program is Neo in the second Matrix movie, and my program is the architect going, like, your first question, while the most imminent is the least relevant, and he goes, how is the disk drive doing? How's the CPU running? And it's like, you're not in a CPU. You're in a script that's running inside of another script that's running inside of a browser, inside of a machine, inside of an interconnected world network of machines. And it's like, I don't know about that, but how fast is this 486 running? It's just a glorious thing to me. But also, who would be trying to emulate a system evaluation shareware program from this time if the barrier to entry wasn't shockingly low? You know, why would you go through that effort? Why would you try to figure out where the emulator was? Was it running correctly? Where could you get this program? I think that barrier to entry, while it sounds like I'm being very shallow, my background in, you know, performance and presentation and description tells me that you have to work hard with people who are patrons, who are not making this their day in, day out existence, to make it as easy for them to experience computer history. which is why locking it away inside of a box or behind a whole bunch of click-throughs is not the way to go. So we put up the console living room, which was all console games. It got very popular. People were really enjoying playing the games. And then we put up the Internet Arcade. Now, I knew there was going to be something special about putting up arcade machines. The concept is so easily described to somebody of, you play arcade machines for free? Sign me up. I did not quite expect, I knew it would be somewhat popular. I didn't expect it to get into the press at the level of what they're talking about here. I did not expect it to become a game show question. I certainly didn't expect it to start showing up on news programs telling everybody who was in that city that there's free video games at the Internet Archive, which means I was both proud of myself and ashamed that we crashed the Internet Archive for a few hours. But over the weekend of the first time we announced the Internet Arcade, 3 million separate people came to visit and played video games. So it was a pretty hot time. And it told me that there was this interest, this love, this awareness, this memory of what these video games were. It was more than just, oh, click here and play around. It was a part of people's lives. And I got to watch people come in and describe things to me, like a child saying, I used to play this in my father's lap, and calling him up and us playing this over the phone together was incredible, thank you. We even, for fun, had an artist, Mar Williams, create a video game artwork for the Internet Archive and Internet Arcade, and we put the files up on the archive to be able to download them, but it's a real working video game in the lobby of our building. Well, we're now in this world. We've been living in this world now, by the way, for about 10 years. And we are now in a world where go to a URL and you're able to play it. So you can just go to a URL on the Internet Archive and you're playing Doom on a street machine in New York that enables you to browse websites. Or I can go into telephone stores like this and just start playing Doom on their demonstration phones. Or I can have a Jaguar game playing in a Best Buy. Because now all of these glorious games are, to use the blessed terminology of the day, fungible tokens. They are absolutely part of every screen, every part of any hardware out there. They work on your phone, they work on your computers. They are another thing entirely. They are the dead brought back to life and being part of the ecosystem. The Oregon Trail, which is a historically inaccurate resource management game created in 1971, is our most popular title. It is played once every 8 seconds at the Internet Archive by schools who, lacking funding, don't always have the ability to play a game with all of the kids. And I was a little bit skeptical of this, but I was actually sent a picture of an entire classroom of children playing this game at the Internet Archive, where they connect to it and interact with it and play it as if it was just, you know, it's a good, solid game for resource management. It's very inaccurate otherwise, but it's very popular because it teaches you how to track resources. We've also gone in directions, since now everything is completely interchangeable, into handheld history, where you're able to play old plastic video games and that were on LCD panels. In fact, we can do a speak and spell. And this one just fascinates me because the group that put together this never used a real speak and spell. They just read the patent in the American Patent Office, and then using what it described the game as, that's what you're playing on the left. And I could just call it a day, and I could call it a victory, and sure, great, this was great. Everything is open sourced, everything's a part of it, good time. But this now brings up the issues of software preservation, and he held up a thing saying, I have almost no time to talk about this, so this is going to be a challenge. But let's do it, everybody. It annoys me that, like with software preservation, it quickly becomes a case of panic. What are the rights holders going to do to us? There's nothing we're going to be able to keep track of. The medium is dying. The actual pieces of software are unattainable or are becoming jacked up as pieces of auctioning that will not enable us to have it, right? Complete and total fear that we're going to lose it. I don't like these feelings. That's not how you develop a discipline. We have this fear that like everything digital is going to disappear. And the fact is it needs much more caretaking than we really would have expected. But that's where we are. You know, CD-ROMs, they mostly hold up, except for when they don't. Floppy disks, same. And of course, there's always the fear of, you know, this is all completely illegal, and I'm going to be the most beautiful dressed guy inside of a prison in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that's not even on a map. But we'll see how that goes. I have hope. I think that we're going to go someplace with this. Every day, people come to me with piles of software. We make them run on the Internet Archive. We recently added Flash emulation. We're about to add Palm Pilot emulation. We're going to have a fun time. It's going to be fun, okay? End, right? No. All right, I'm going to do this in like 10 seconds. There's something I call the blorb. It is the concept that all of these things that we are preserving digitally will have some meaning beyond their actual pieces of whatever they are. We're starting to see this already. You have something like an old computer magazine, but what they are, in fact, is not just what's in the magazine, but the actual aesthetics, approach, formatting of those magazines. Those are going to become areas of input in what we are now calling AI, but we know they're just complicated algorithms that will analyze these to understand what used to be there. You take a picture like this, it's children playing a computer, but it's not. It's also how humans interact with computers. It's the aesthetics of black and white. It's the digital world that we're in that is going to be turned into the raw meat that goes into these machines that will try to recreate things based on bizarre aesthetics. It's coming. If you are under 25, it will be part of your life by the time you're 30. We now have these abilities to do things like the Doomsday Project, where people are creating these incredibly good scanners. It is able to take and analyze video and audio signals so that you're able to look at them, be able to see digitally that there's a problem. This is videotape being scanned by this machine. So every single piece of information that's off that videotape is being dragged into a digital file, which then the power becomes less. How do we keep these old spindle things running? And becomes more of how can we write cool algorithms to pull out of these things that we might not have even known. Again, we're going to have this kind of, we can sit here and say, oh, this is old nostalgia, or I can say we are learning how things decay, and that will become a decay filter for the world. This is doom on the left, and then on the right, upscaled. It's a great world. This blorb is growing. It's flexible. It's universal. In America, there's a term called kit bash, which is do things you're not supposed to do. And I say kit bash the blorb. That's either going to be the ravings of a lunatic that you will never remember, or you'll think I was a really interesting, prescient guy you saw in your youth. All right. The game is never over at the Internet Arcade. Thank you.